My name is Mark Ritson. Some of you will know me from the column that I write for Marketing Week, but I have two other jobs. The first one is my real job is I'm a marketing professor. So I've spent the last 17 years teaching brand management, first at London Business School, then at MIT in America, and for the last 7 years in Australia. Most of my, 3/4 of my time is still spent now in Australia, where I'm based down there. But like most business school professors, I work as a consultant. So this time of the year, I tend to be home in London and working for a variety of different clients. No surprise, working on brand management. So I thought it would be good to begin with a short history of brand management. And it is a relatively short history. This handsome fellow is Neil McElroy, and he invented brand management, which is pretty cool. He was a very young P&G marketer. He found that the second brand of soap powder was being neglected by the first because it was too small, and he wrote a 2-page memo, famously now called the McElroy Memo, in which he laid out the principles of how to manage brands rather than products. And we still apply those principles pretty much today. So we can officially say that really brand management, at least from P&G's point of view, was invented in 1931. But for the rest of us, not lucky enough to work for P&G, the discipline of brand management begins in 1988 with this handsome fellow, Professor David Archer, who wrote the first of a series of books on managing brands. So we've had brands for thousands of years, but the actual study and profession of managing them is really 30 years old. Which, when you think about it, is quite surprising, because these days brand management is everywhere. We haven't had it for that long. But there is an older history to brand management that has existed for really half a millennia that comes from luxury brands. So there are handsome men like Thomas Burberry, Edouard Hoyer, obviously the founder of Tag Heuer, and Madame Clicquot Ponsardin, La Veuve, the widow from Veuve Clicquot, who were practicing principles of branding long before Mr. McElroy or Professor Archer were ever born. And it's a very interesting topic, and one that's been around for a lot longer than we might imagine. So what I'd like to do for our session this morning is delve into the book of luxury brands. I'd like to pull out what I believe are the 7 main principles that I think luxury brands apply, and they have been applying for about 400 years. And then what I'd like to do is apply it into the rest of non-luxury brands, because very few people work for luxury brands. They're lovely. But I genuinely believe that the principles that we've practiced within luxury brands can and should be applied in some cases to non-luxury brands to the benefit of the brands and the managers in question. So that's what my session will be. I'd like to take 7 things. I'll give you an example from a luxury case, and then we'll apply it or show it being done already by a non-luxury brand. Okay? So let me tell you when I started working for luxury brands. I'm not a very luxurious guy, as you can tell, but I do love my brands. And back in 1998, there weren't many professors teaching brand management, and I, at the time, was teaching it at London Business School. I was recruited by LVMH, which is the world's biggest luxury goods company, and told that I had to sign all these agreements, and then that I would be essentially working in Paris for them on their amazing range of brands. And then I heard nothing for about 8 weeks. And I just sat there trying to work out, what am I going to be doing? Which brand will I work for? Will it be Tag Heuer? Will it be Dior? Will it be Louis Vuitton? Which brand will I work for first? And I heard nothing. And then finally, about 8 weeks later, I got an email to say, get the train, the 5:45 a.m. from Waterloo Station, take it down to Gare du Nord, and you'll be met by someone for your first day of work. Now, normally, as many of you know, you get sent a file with information or data or stuff to analyze. Nothing. Just instructions to catch the train. So I take the train down to Gare du Nord station. I get picked up by a guy straight out of Central Casting. Black shirt, black suit, black tie, black wraparound shades, the best-looking dude you've ever seen in your life. Women were walking into things because he was so hot. He was actually smoking a cigarette directly under the Ne Fumez Pas sign in Gare du Nord station. He was straight out of Central Casting. He said nothing to me, except indicated a very large car. He led me out of the station, bundled me into this car, and drove me for about 30 minutes, still with no instructions, to a northern suburb of Paris called Asnières. And we pulled up outside a beautiful house. He ushered me inside, and then he drove off. And it was 10 o'clock in the morning. I had no instructions. I had no idea why I was there. And all it was me, a house, and a woman that clearly was there to make the tea, but that was pretty much it. And so I walked around this house, and it became clear very quickly that this was the original home and maison of Louis Vuitton. Not the brand, but the man. When Monsieur Vuitton arrived from the Jura Mountains, this was the house that he built, and the workshop behind it where he began his amazing adventure. So I spent the day there. No one came for me, no one called me, and I walked around Mr. Vuitton's house. I went into the private museum and looked at the old bags. I spent the afternoon reading the archive books. I played billiards on Monsieur Vuitton's billiard table. He had a very nice billiard table. And at 4 o'clock, the good-looking dude came back, picked me up, drove me back to Gare du Nord station, and sent me back to London. And I sat on the train for 3 hours on the Eurostar thinking, what the fucking hell was that all about? French. And then I got a call the next day. And the message that the group was sending to me and to many other senior managers they've hired since is you will eventually be sent spreadsheets and revenue analysis and brand strategies. But we understand brands properly, see? And you're an Anglo-Saxon. So before we do all that, we put you in the house because our brands begin with a man and a place and a time and a location because we understand brands, see? So we're going to start there. And then we'll move forward. And it's a very important lesson and one that I believe many consumer goods brands have forgotten. Remember your roots. Brands come from a place, from a founder, from a time, the strong ones at least. And we are too quick to go and do our research and move forward because most of you suffer from a terrible affliction. You are Anglo-Saxons, and Anglo-Saxons have many traits. One of the traits is you don't think you have any traits. You think you're normal, yeah? Those strange Latins, those weird Asians, but I am vanilla, I am normal, yeah? We are the most trait-laden race on the planet, and one of the other traits is we disrespect history. You cannot manage a brand without studying the founder and the history first. You know, we're very keen on this kind of communication work, right? Corona, from where you would rather be. Wherever you'd rather be, that's where our brand is from. Or let's sell Stella Artois, this beautiful Belgian beer with images from the French Riviera. We call this sometimes aspirational branding, but let's give it its real name. It's total fucking bullshit, yes? These brands should be, they're from a place. Why are we selling Belgian beer from the French Riviera? Why are we saying we're from anywhere you'd rather be? Strong brands come from a place, they come from people, and they're proud of their history. Let's remember the original meaning of the word brand. Brandir, it means to burn. It comes from the Viking term. It means I burn my mark onto this product because I made it in this place and in this time. And I don't care whether it's the 21st century or the 24th century, the definition is important. Strong brands come from people and places, and they remember it, whether they're luxury brands or not. Number 2, understand your brand DNA. Now, in our world of non-luxury, we call this brand positioning. In luxury, they call it brand DNA, but the two concepts are very analogous. The key lesson you can take from luxury brands is they don't use all this bullshit that we use in the consumer goods world. There's no complex triangles, no concentric circles, no fucking brand book, no 25-slide presentation to capture the essence of the brand. It's simple, it's tight, and there's normally 3 or 4 words, 3 or 4 genes that define the DNA of a brand. And there's none of the usual suspect bullshit that most of you have in your brand positioning because you haven't done the work properly. None of that innovation crap, no integrity, no excellence, clothing. All the obvious stuff that we don't need to mention isn't there. There are 3 or 4 tight words that define the brand's DNA. And interestingly, in luxury, it's defined from history and from founders, and the consumer has no say in it. Here's a good example from the excellent work of the Gucci Group. This is their DNA for several of the brands within their group. Boucheron, which is a marvelous jewelry brand, but precious and mysterious. 2 words, that's it. That's what Boucheron is. Gucci, seduction, powerful, and accomplished. Sergio Rossi, sexy and comfortable. Yeah? Simplicity. Now, it's a lot easier to put together a stupid triangle with 47 words that say innovation and lots of other shit. It's much harder to find 2 or 3 words that capture the spirit of the brand, but we can use this. It inspires creative people. It focuses the efforts. I did a session with the great Professor Kevin Keller, who many of you will know has written the ultimate textbook on brand management, which is really the only book you have to read because all the other books say the same thing or you shouldn't be reading them. And Kevin is the PhD student of David Archer and now the leading thinker in branding. Brilliant guy. But he gave this talk at a session we were doing in Arizona on the problems at Starbucks a couple of years ago. And he said basically, the reason Starbucks are in trouble is they've lost touch with their prime target segments. Their competitors have developed strategic capabilities to threaten Starbucks' position. And the points of product differentiation that Starbucks once had have now become points of parity. Now, it's kind of accurate, but it's really way too complex. The real problem with Starbucks is they just forgot who they were. And they forgot their link back to their origins. So when they brought Howard Schultz back, the former founder, hey presto, Schultz understood the brand, the DNA, the origins, and you just had to reapply it in a modern way. And hey presto, Starbucks is back. 3, understand your brand codes. So, codes are more than a logo. So yes, a logo is a code, but a code is any symbolic device that represents the brand that the consumer recognizes. Yeah? So the logo is in that set, but for luxury brands and for other strong brands, there is a wider set of graphical and other motifs. Let me show you some examples and see if we can guess what they are. You'll have to shout pretty loud, but let's have a look. Anyone recognize the following brands? Let's start with this color here. Which brand are we talking about? Which luxury brand? Tiffany. Anyone? This one. Hermes. This one. Ferrari. No Ferrari owners. This one. Dom Perignon. Thank you. This one. Rolex. Thank you. This one. Dior. This one. Hermes. None of these are logos. They're symbolic motifs that are instantly associated with the brand, and luxury brands use them to their strong advantage. Let me show you how. You have a big challenge with a luxury brand. You have to take a 150-year-old fashion brand and make it hot and cool, so a 23-year-old English girl will feel trendy wearing it. Or you have to take a 400-year-old cognac brand and make a 30-year-old Chinese businessman feel like this is the ultimate and the most modern thing he can drink. And the way we do that and balance heritage with modernity is we play with our codes. So the famous monogram of Louis Vuitton, about 10 years ago, the pop artist Takeshi Murakami was brought in and told to fiddle with the code. And he produced the famous multicolor line. At Hermes, they're famous for playing and making their codes come to life in their advertising. The start of the Burberry revolution began when they took the check, the code of Burberry, from a Japanese businessman's Macintosh and put it on the beautiful breasts of Miss Moss. Same code, but in a different place. And finally, we've had tremendous fun with Dom Perignon. Mark Newson has been playing with the brand now. This is a neon green plastic Magnum champagne cooler designed to modernize and play with the codes. But you see what's going on, right? It's a magic trick. It's the same, but it's different. It's history, and it's the present. It's heritage, and it's creativity. It's the way that we balance heritage with modernity. We play and fiddle with codes. Now, this contrasts with the approach to logos and fonts that you're used to maybe in your organization, where we have the dreaded consistent look and feel. Every logo must be the same. Every font must be the same. It must be 12-point. It must be in the bottom left-hand corner. It's all total bollocks. This is not branding. This is what people do when they don't understand branding. Logo fascism. There's no place in our world. Look at the monkeys at the Olympics and what they're doing. They're ruining the Olympic brand by focusing on control of the identity. Play with the identity. It depends which church you belong to in terms of what's the biggest brand in the world. If you believe in the Interbrand valuation league table or the Millward Brown Brand Z league table, let's not go into the debate now, but there are two different ways and two different league tables. If you buy into Interbrand's approach, Coca-Cola is the world's biggest brand. If you buy into Millward Brown's approach, Google is the world's biggest brand. It's up to you. But either way, it doesn't matter because my point still applies. Both of these brands don't have logo fascism. They're playing with their codes. They're changing and inverting and not part of the fascist approach. In the case of Google, as you know, they change the central icon on a weekly basis. How does that stand with the morons in your company that are telling you must always do it the same way? And in Coca-Cola's case, they've taken their cans, their packaging, and they've tweaked and inverted. This is smart, modern brand thinking, linking back to the codes of the brand. So, playing with codes is our second one. Third one, brand revitalization. Don't be in such a hurry to reposition your brands. It's usually bullshit. It's arrogant brand manager stuff. Revitalization is the challenge. don't meddle with these brands. They were probably alive before you were born, and they will certainly be alive after you're dead. Respect them. Refresh them, but don't try and change the DNA. And here we glimpse with luxury brands that have been around for many centuries, one of the great paradoxes of branding, the paradox of time. So, this is probably the most famous photograph in fashion. This is a photograph from 1947 from a very young Richard Avedon in the Pigalle district of Paris. And Christian Dior in 1947 launched his first collection, and he wanted to bring couture to the streets. And so this was a model wearing a Dior gown, and Avedon wanted to photograph her in the streets of Paris. And completely unexpectedly, these two old birds turned up and ripped the dress off the model and left her naked in the street crying in Pigalle. Now, to our eyes, this seems like a strange activity, but you have to remember 1947 in Paris is even worse than 1947 in London, the après-guerre period. Rationing was in place, there were no clothes to buy, and in the middle of this incredibly plain and austere time comes Christian Dior with glamorous, feminine, but also provocative fashion. Tragically, Monsieur Dior dies only 10 years after he starts his house, and then we have to find a series of replacements, starting with the very young Yves Saint Laurent, then Marc Bohan, and finally Gianfranco Ferré. They take over running the house of Christian Dior, and by the time we get to 1997, here is Franco Ferré's final collection for Dior. Now, if you look at it, there's something wrong, right? Because this is Isabella Gianni, one of the most beautiful women in the world. She looks bored out of her mind. He looks bored out of her mind. All the provocation is gone. How have they become so distant from this brand? And the answer, paradoxically, is they kept trying to be consistent. This dress and this dress aren't that different, yeah? But this dress, to the eyes of a woman in 1947 in France, was provocative. But if you keep making the same dresses over and over through the years, that same dress looks very different to the eyes of a woman from 1957, 1967, 1987, 1997. And the paradox of brands over time is you must change to remain consistent to your brand. And therein lies one of the great challenges. When brands reach middle age, around 35, 45, they have to change what they do, or ironically, they will become contradictory to themselves. And so when Dior hired John Galliano, the fashion industry said, "No, ce n'est pas possible. Galliano is so wrong for Dior. Dior is luxury, but Dior is classic, Dior is traditional. Galliano is too provocative for Dior." But the Dior group had done the right thing. They'd gone back to history, distilled the essence of the brand, and then asked the question, what does this mean, in this case, for 1997? And when Galliano got going, famously he produced this. Obo Chic in France, the most famous couture collection of the last 20 years. Fashion inspired by the homeless of Paris who slept in newspapers. And John would go running by the Seine, and he saw these guys sleeping in newspapers, and he said, "I will create a collection modeled on the homeless of Paris." Huge scandal, huge provocation. It looks nothing like this, but it's the same. Across a 50-year period, to be true to the brand, you have to play a different game. 5, nobody loves vanilla. Nobody hates vanilla, but no one really fucking likes it that much. The difference between consumer goods is that we struggle with low gross margins, relatively high unit sales. Most of our profit contribution comes from lots and lots of sales. As a result, we have to focus on low negatives, which means you can't afford to piss off too many people, right? Because we need 20, 30% of our market to actually like our product. The gift of luxury brands is very high gross margins and relatively low unit sales. That's a very handy thing because it means we can engender passion in the smaller segment and not give a toss about the mass market itself. Let me give you my favorite example. So Hublot is one of the fastest growing luxury watch brands in the world. It's a relatively young brand. It was created in 1980 by this handsome fellow, Carlo Crocco. And Carlo had a very unique aesthetic view. He wanted to make watches, which as you can see have a 24-karat rose gold face, but he used a black rubber strap with the gold face. Very unusual. In today's money, about £25,000, very high-end watches. incredibly unusual for 1980. But the brand stayed pretty much where it was. It made beautiful gold and rubber watches, but didn't evolve. Stayed relatively small. Carlo retired, sold the brand to this man, a famous genius of watchmaking, Jean-Claude Biver, the man that built Omega in China. And Monsieur Biver set about, first of all, doing what Dior did. Go back and work out what's in the brand, and then bring it forward. So I'll let Mr. Biver tell you in this very short but interesting video, how does he find the DNA of the brand? And it's one of the sexiest DNAs I've ever worked on because it's one word. Monsieur Biver.
Hublot came out with a product in 1980, a product that was based on an innovation to introduce rubber as a strap. It seems very common today, but rubber in 1980 was a real courageous move. It was even the provocation. People said, hey, on a gold watch, rubber? Because people didn't know rubber comes from a tree, rubber is natural, rubber is very comfortable, it's very flexible, and rubber is very resistant. And it's waterproof, so finally it's ideal for a watch. And then Hublot could not evolve. They stayed on a product. And I said, we are not a product. We have a message first. We have a concept. And the concept is fusion. Why? Because in 1980, when we put gold together with rubber, we created a fusion because gold and rubber never come together. They were together only one time in life during the Big Bang. Then everything was in one. And then rubber went away and said, okay, I go now on my tree. And gold said, okay, I go and rest in South Africa under the earth. And since then, they never met, till people take them and connect them. So I said, Hublot made a fusion. And fusion must be our message, must be our philosophy, must be our religion. And once we have this religion clear, and it is named fusion, then we can develop further products that not necessarily need rubber anymore, because fusion goes further away than just rubber. It can be carbon, it can be ceramic, whatever. So I was capable to free Hublot from the product and give Hublot a message. And from that message, new products were born.
This is what he did with it. So this is what we call really good advertising, which is better than what you do, right? So last Christmas, Bernie Ecclestone, who, as you know, is the CEO of Formula One and wears very proudly a Hublot watch, very good friends with Mr. Biver, was coming out of his apartment in Knightsbridge, and he was mugged for his watch and beaten quite severely, as you can see. This is the police photograph that the police took when he went into the police station. And Bernie's in his 80s, and he put up a fight to keep his watch. Anyway, he's also got a great sense of humor. So he sent this photograph to Monsieur Biver in Geneva and said, look what some people will do to get their hands on a Hublot. And Mr. Biver took one look at it and went, that's our Christmas advertising campaign, that is. It went in the FT, the Wall Street Journal, and China Daily 2 days later. Yeah? This is how to play the game. Think about it. Fusion. Fusion. What's more fusion than the poorest man in London fighting with the richest man of London over their Hublot watch? Yeah? This is pure. Now, if you wear a Rolex, you hate this. Good. If you wear a Rolex, you'd never wear an Hublot because you're too boring to wear Hublot. You'll buy your Speedmaster and live in a boring house. Yeah? And then the branding professor from Harvard Business School, Professor Rohit Deshpande, wrote to the FT, this Hublot ad is in poor taste. It's bad marketing and creates the wrong kind of long-term consumer impression because it contravenes 3 principles of branding. What a fucking moron. 3 principles of branding. There's only one principle of branding, yes? What's your position? Yeah? And what do I have to do to deliver that? There are no rules of branding, except whatever is here, I must deliver to my consumers. And all of the rules are bullshit. My favorite non-luxury CEO is Mike Jeffries. Jeffries, as you know, is the boss of Abercrombie & Fitch, and he doesn't do many interviews for reasons that will become obvious when we see what he says when he does his interviews. So he's interviewed in GQ magazine 4 years ago about his philosophy behind Abercrombie & Fitch. This is what he said. In every school, there are the cool and popular kids, and then there are the not-so-cool kids. We go after the cool kids. We go after the attractive all-American kid with a great attitude and a lot of friends. A lot of people don't belong in our clothes, and they can't belong. Are we exclusionary? Absolutely. Yeah? We use the word exclusive, we forget what it means. It means fuck off. I don't want you to wear my brand. Yeah? It means you're too fat, you're too old, you're too ugly, I don't want you. Yeah? Or you're too beautiful, but you're too poor. Yeah? The point is, if you want to be exclusive, remember what it means. I exclude you from my brand and I take you instead. And if you want to use the word, you have to play the game. And when they asked him about the brands that were in trouble, he said the companies that are in trouble in fashion are trying to target everybody, young, old, fat, skinny, but then you become totally vanilla. You don't alienate anybody, but you don't excite anybody either. That's the point. If you want a strong brand, you cannot be all things to all people. You have to believe first in segmentation and then second in targeting. Who do you want and who do you not want? If you want to market a session like this, you have to think carefully. I don't care about the morons that aren't here. Fuck them. I only care about the people that are in this room, yeah? You're only about 5% of the total audience walking around this room. You're my people. The other ones, I want to really insult them. I want to say something that they find to be difficult. I don't want everyone to think, oh, that was an okay session. I want a small proportion of powerful, smart people to go, that was really good. And the point is, you can't have everyone in this hall thinking that was really good, because some of the people here are morons, yes? The smart ones are here. The morons are over there talking about logos, right? And buying little frisbees for their brands. That's the point. Who do you want and who do you not want? And you cannot have a brand if you go after everyone. Marketing is not democracy. If you believe that everybody is important, become a social worker, become a primary school teacher. That philosophy is super important in that realm. In marketing, who do you want and who do you not want? So, nobody likes vanilla in summary, or nobody really fucking loves it. And that's the key point. Number 6, learn to be quiet. Yes? Learn to be quiet. Burberry is one of our great triumphs. And if you look at why Angela Arendts, the CEO of Burberry, and before her, Rosemary Bravo, are so good, they don't say a lot. Yeah? Nothing kills a brand than a big, dumb brand manager, marketing director, or CEO going on TV and going, nah, I'm the marketing director. Shut the fuck up. You do damage to your brands. Consumers don't want to hear from us. We are evil. The minute a marketing director speaks to the media, you hurt your brand. Sit down, shut the fuck up, and find someone who's on brand and more relevant. And the answer is usually find the people that make the product. The consumers don't want to hear from us. They want to hear from the artisan. They want to hear from the people that made the product. That's what branding meant. Remember the original definition. I put my mark upon a product. They don't need marketing directors going and talking to the media. What they need is the people that make the product. As a marketing director, you're in the back making sure you've got the right person saying the right things that comes from production or design. The old ways are still the best. Jack Welch is a moron, right? We got this whole belief that CEOs should get in front of the media and talk about their companies. Talk to analysts and investors. When it comes to the popular press, do what Angela Arendts and Rosemary Bravo did and say nothing. And learn to pick the right people from production to speak for the brand. And finally, every Christmas tree needs a star. And there's nothing better than talking about Christmas in the middle of June. This is a very important learning from luxury. So let's go to the wonderful world of Chanel. Why not? We can't talk about luxury without talking about Chanel. There are 3 basic lines within Chanel. We have couture, of course. Yes? We have beautiful dresses that only 7 or 8 women, usually only 1 or 2, will purchase. Then we have our ready-to-wear collection sold through Chanel's boutiques. And then we have accessories, sunglasses. We can even count lipstick among this as well. Now let's look at the prices. You would pay upwards of £100,000 for this couture dress. It is hand-designed for you by Lagerfeld and his team in Paris. This beautiful outfit would cost you about £3,000, not cheap. And finally, you'd still pay about 300 to 400 quid for these very nice sunglasses. For the lipstick, maybe £20. Interesting, looking at the prices is one thing. Look at the profit contribution that these different lines make to the house of Chanel. So couture in a good year would lose them about £20 million. That would be a successful year. When you've only got 60 customers, it's pretty hard to break even with these prices. Ready-to-wear is a globally now, a very successful product. We estimate maybe £800 million of profit contribution globally. And finally, your accessories around £3 billion. Most of the profit comes from high-margin, widely sold product. So, if you look purely at profit contribution, you're Anglo-Saxon, you'd go, let's get rid of couture. In fact, we're probably not even sure about ready-to-wear anymore. Let's make more lipstick and sunglasses. But that's why there aren't many English CEOs in luxury brands. Because it's not just about profit. You also have to build the brand. Couture builds the brand. Ready-to-wear builds the brand. And there's nothing inconsistent about sunglasses or lipstick, but they don't do a lot of good for the brand. So the lesson is, what is the reason behind the product? Some products are there to make profit. Some are there to communicate brand. This handsome man is Jean-Christophe Babin, the boss of Tag Heuer. And he, as he says, about 15 years ago, you could buy a Tag Heuer watch for 60 quid in a gas station in France. It was pretty much at the bottom of where it was meant to be. And Monsieur Babin has rebuilt the brand, and he's done it with products like this. This is the Monaco concept watch. It's unique in watchmaking, and it won the honor in Basel 3 years ago because it has no wheels. Every proper watch is run by wheels and spigots. This watch runs only on belts, like an engine, little belts. Insanely difficult to make, costs you £150,000 to buy, and probably won't make a lot of money for the house of Tag Heuer by the time you keep fixing it over the years. But it's crucial, because it puts the star on Tag Heuer's Christmas tree. And if we put a star on top of the tree gets taller. And if the tree gets taller, the base is wider. And if the base is wider, there's more room for presents at the bottom. Yeah? We use premium line extensions, often not profitable, to make the image of the brand, to improve the exclusivity, to create a pure vision so we can make money around the bottom of the tree. Different products do different things. So, 7 lessons from luxury. Number 1, remember your roots. You cannot manage your brand unless you know the name of the founder and you've been to the place where the brand was created. That sounds like French bullshit, but it's true. And as Anglo-Saxons, we don't respect our heritage enough. The answers for the future are often in the past. And I promise you that turns out to be one of the most important things I've learned from my French bosses. Brand DNA. You don't have to call it DNA. You can call it positioning, proposition, essence. They all mean the same thing. But you can only have one concept, and you better not have more than 5 words. Yeah? If you need a PowerPoint slide to tell you what the positioning of your brand is, you're fucked before you start. Yeah? It has to be tight. It has to be tight. Codes. There's more to life than logo fascism. What are the different identities and icons? And you only need 3 or 4 of them. First of all, use them to own the space. And second, play with them if your brand is getting into old age. The paradox of time. Don't reposition brands. It's stupid. Learn to respect them. Go back into history and identify what is the positioning or the DNA. And then ask the question, what does this mean for 2012? Chances are what you have to do in 2012 to be true to the brand isn't what you were doing in 1995. Yeah? The paradox is we must change to be consistent. Don't be vanilla. No one will hate you, but no one will fucking remember your name either. Yeah? Who's your segment? Turn them on, and if that means turning off everyone else, awesome. We don't care. This is not democracy. A small, tight segment is more important than trying to be all things to all people. Let the creators speak. The best brand managers and marketing directors I've worked with would never speak to the popular media ever, 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 ever. Right? Look at the trouble Mr. Diamond's in now from Barclays. How do you feel about Barclays Bank when you look at that guy? Yeah? You feel good about it if you bank with Barclays? Do you fuck? Yeah? You feel terrible. Yeah? Let the creators speak. Take the suits away. They don't need to talk to consumers. And finally, the role of premium line extensions. Every brand could do well with some star on top of their Christmas tree. Thank you very much for coming. I think we now have a brief amount of time for questions. Thank you.